There is a kind of suffering that has no name and therefore no treatment. It is not depression, though it looks like depression from the outside. It is not laziness, though it produces the same results. It is not a lack of intelligence or ability or opportunity. It is the suffering of a man who is capable of more than he is doing, who knows it, and who has built an entire life around not having to confront it. You can recognize it by one feeling, a specific low-grade, persistent unease, not sharp enough to force action, not distant enough to ignore, just there, in the background, like a sound you can almost but not quite hear. The philosopher Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps and spent the rest of his life studying what keeps people psychologically alive under extreme conditions, had a name for this feeling. He called it the existential vacuum, the hollow at the center of a life that has everything it needs and no idea what it is for. Today we are going to talk about that, about the specific philosophical and psychological forces that produce weak men, not weak in the physical sense, weak in the sense that matters more, and about what the tradition of philosophy across thousands of years has to say about how a man finds his way back. Let me describe someone you might recognize. He is not a bad person. He is, by most measures, fine. He has a job. He has a place to live. He has a phone full of entertainment and a kitchen full of food and a social media account where, occasionally, he posts something that gets a reasonable number of likes. He is also deeply, quietly stuck. He wakes up most mornings, and the first thing he does is check his phone. Not because anything important has happened, because the phone is a way of not being alone with himself for the first 30 seconds of the day. He has things he means to do, projects he has half started and set aside, conversations he has been meaning to have, changes he has been meaning to make. He thinks about them regularly. He feels, when he thinks about them, a mixture of guilt and vague intention that never quite tips over into action. He is comfortable. That is the word. Comfortable in a way that has slowly become a cage. Because comfort, at a certain level of completeness, stops being rest and becomes avoidance. The couch is not recovery anymore. The scrolling is not relaxation. The choosing of the easy option, day after day, in small decisions that seem to mean nothing, has compounded into a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. And the most painful part is this. He knows. He is not deceived about his situation. Somewhere underneath the comfort and the distraction and the endless low-stakes entertainment, he knows exactly what is happening. He knows he is capable of more. He knows the distance between the man he is and the man he could be. And the knowledge does not produce change. It produces shame. And shame produces more avoidance. And avoidance produces more comfort. And the cycle tightens. This is not a moral failing. It is a philosophical crisis, and it has a very specific set of causes that philosophy has been articulating for a long time. The first diagnosis comes from Nietzsche, again, because Nietzsche spent his entire philosophical life trying to understand this exact problem. He looked at the men of his time, 19th century Europe, comfortable, educated, safe by historical standards, and he saw something that alarmed him. He saw men who had abandoned the project of becoming, who had settled, who had, in his language, chosen the last man over the Übermensch. The last man is Nietzsche's most devastating image. The last man is the human being at the end of history, the one who has eliminated all suffering, all risk, all aspiration, all discomfort, who blinks and says, "We have invented happiness." The last man is warm. The last man is fed. The last man is entertained. The last man has no enemies because he has no strong enough commitments to make enemies. He has no great loves because great love requires great vulnerability. He has no achievements because achievement requires the willingness to fail publicly. The last man is, in Nietzsche's precise language, contemptible. Not because he is evil, because he has abdicated, Because being human, for Nietzsche, means being in the process of becoming something, always pushing against a limit, always asking more of yourself than is comfortable. He wrote, "Man must be surpassed. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end." A bridge, not a destination. The point of being human is not to arrive somewhere comfortable and stop. The point is to keep crossing, to keep asking what the next thing is that this life requires of you. The man who stops crossing, who finds a comfortable position on the bridge and decides to stay, has not found peace. He has found a slower kind of death. Now Aristotle, because Aristotle gives us the most precise account of what goes wrong when a man stops developing. Aristotle believed that every living thing has a telos, a Greek word meaning purpose or end, not end as in termination, end as in fulfillment. The telos of an acorn is the oak tree, the full expression of what that thing is capable of becoming. Human beings have a telos too. Aristotle called it eudaimonia, usually translated as happiness but more accurately translated as flourishing. The full actualization of your capacities, becoming completely what you are capable of being. And here is the critical point. Aristotle did not think eudaimonia was a feeling. He did not think it was something you experienced in moments of comfort or pleasure. He thought it was something you did, an activity, the ongoing activity of living in accordance with your highest capacities. Which means that a man who is comfortable but not developing is not flourishing. He may feel fine. He may feel relatively content, but he is not living his telos. He is not becoming what he is capable of becoming. And somewhere in his body, his psyche, his soul, whatever word you prefer, he knows it. Aristotle also identified something he called akrasia, weakness of will, the state of knowing what you should do and choosing not to do it anyway, choosing the lesser pleasure in the moment over the greater good in the long run. Akrasia is not stupidity. It is not ignorance. It is a specific failure of integration between what you know and how you act, between your values and your behavior. And Aristotle thought it was one of the most serious problems a person could have, because a life structured around akrasia is a life of permanent internal contradiction. You become someone who does not trust themselves, whose word, even to themselves, means nothing. The man who keeps promising himself that tomorrow he will begin and never begins has not just failed to start a project. He has damaged his relationship with his own will. Viktor Frankl arrives with the most urgent voice of all. Frankl was a Viennese psychiatrist who was sent to Auschwitz, who survived, who watched men in the camps, men who had lost everything, men in conditions of unimaginable suffering, and noticed something that his entire prior medical training had not prepared him for. The men who survived were not always the physically strongest. They were not always the most resourceful or the most connected or the luckiest. The men who survived with remarkable consistency were the ones who had a why, a reason to live, a purpose that extended beyond their own comfort or survival, something they had to do, someone they had to return to, a meaning that their suffering could not take from them. He wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." And then he came back to the comfortable West, and he found something that disturbed him almost as much as the camps. He found men with everything, with safety and comfort and abundance and freedom, men who had no why at all, men who were free from suffering but not free for anything, men in the existential vacuum. He argued that the great epidemic of the modern world is not anxiety or depression as their own primary conditions. It is meaninglessness. A life oriented around the avoidance of discomfort rather than the pursuit of purpose will eventually hollow out. The absence of meaning does not announce itself loudly. It accumulates quietly. It shows up as the persistent, low-grade unease, as the comfort that never quite satisfies, as the entertainment that fills hours without filling the person. He wrote, "What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for some goal worthy of him." Tension. He is saying you need tension, not suffering for its own sake, but the productive tension of being pulled towards something that matters, the tension of a man who has decided what he is for and is in the process of becoming it. Without that tension, the man does not relax, he decays. Here is what psychology confirms. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent decades studying what he called the need for meaning. His research found that human beings have four fundamental needs for meaning: purpose, the sense of working towards something worthwhile; values, a framework for deciding what is right and wrong; efficacy, the feeling that your actions make a difference; and self-worth, the sense that you matter. What is striking about this list is what is not on it. Comfort is not on it. Entertainment is not on it. Safety and ease and the absence of difficulty are not on it. And Baumeister found something important. When people are unable to meet their need for meaning through genuine purpose and values, they do not simply do without meaning. They substitute. They find meaning in smaller, cheaper, more immediately available places. In tribal belonging, my group against your group. In consumption, the brief satisfaction of acquiring something. In entertainment, the borrowed meaning of fictional narratives and other people's drama. These substitutes work. In the short term, they produce the feeling of meaning without the cost of actually pursuing it. But over time, substitutes compound into emptiness. The man who has been feeding his need for meaning with cheap substitutes for years is not resting. He is starving, and the starvation shows up exactly as described, as the hollow, as the unease, as the low-grade awareness that something is missing and the inability to name it precisely because numbing it would require confronting it. So what do you actually do, today specifically? The first practice is Frankel's. Take 20 minutes and answer 3 questions in writing. What would I want people to say about me at my funeral? Not what they would say now, but what I would want. What am I willing to suffer for? Not what I enjoy. What I am willing to pay a real cost for. And what would I do if I knew I could not fail and also knew that no one would ever find out? The intersection of your answers to those 3 questions is close to your actual purpose, not the performed one. The real one. Most men have never sat with these questions for 20 consecutive minutes. That alone will tell you something. The second practice is Aristotle's solution to acrasia. He did not believe you could think your way out of weakness of will. He believed you had to act your way out. The method is this. Identify one commitment you have broken with yourself recently. One thing you said you would do that you did not do, and do it today, not tomorrow, today, not the whole thing necessarily. The first concrete step. And when you have done it, make the next commitment, small, specific, achievable, and keep it. The rebuilding of a man's relationship with his own will is not done in grand gestures. It is done in the accumulation of small kept promises. Each one repairs something. Each one makes the next one slightly easier. The third practice is Nietzsche's. At the end of each day, ask one question. Did I do the harder thing or the easier thing when they conflicted? Not always, not perfectly, just honestly, because the pattern of your answers over a week will show you exactly who you are currently becoming. And if the pattern shows a man consistently choosing ease, consistently taking the path of least resistance in small moments when no one is watching, that man is not resting. He is rehearsing. He is rehearsing the last man. And rehearsal, as any actor knows, becomes the performance. Here is what I want to leave with you. The weak man is not a villain. He is not your enemy. In many cases, he is simply a man who was never given a philosophy, who was never told that comfort is not the point, who was never shown what the difference feels like between a life organized around avoidance and a life organized around purpose. He drifted into softness the way most people drift into most things, not through a single dramatic decision, through 1,000 small ones, each individually harmless, collectively a life. Nietzsche said man is a bridge. Aristotle said man is always in the process of becoming. Frankl said man needs not comfort but meaning, and all three are pointing at the same unavoidable truth. You were not built for the couch, not permanently, not as a way of life. You were built for something that asks something of you. That requires something of you. That leaves you, at the end of a day, tired in a way that feels earned rather than hollow. The existential vacuum does not fill with entertainment. It does not fill with comfort. It does not fill with the approval of strangers on a screen. It fills with one thing only: a man who has decided what he is for and is, day by day, in the difficult, unglamorous, unfilmed work of becoming it.